tracking. I know, you probably thought it was going to be the Excel sheet, but it's not. It's not going to be the Excel sheet. The three non-negotiables are what? Energy management, database, and tracking. Tracking what? Post-it notes, whiteboards, the crazy Excel sheet. There's been an evolution along the way. How you're tracking the arc of your file is such a unique thing for so many people. I didn't really want to get into that Excel sheet and try and suggest this is how you should do it. I thought it would be better for us to take this time. One of the key things that used to come from that Excel sheet when people actually applied it and backdated it and went back through, say, the previous year and input all their files with the gross mortgage amount, gross amount of the mortgage, the compensation, et cetera, they would realize they hadn't been paid on files. They'd either missed the finders, they'd missed the volume bonus, they'd missed compensation, not because anybody was trying to keep money from them, it's because mistakes happen. It's just the way it is. So I'm not gonna get into that Excel sheet, I'm just gonna focus totally on the money. Because, I don't know, does money matter? Yes, but also no. It doesn't matter that much to a lot of you. And I know that now because the position that I am in, I see the millions of dollars that sit waiting to be paid out and sometimes sit and sit and sit, not for a few weeks, not for a few months, for like a year and a half. And it's like the broker doesn't want their money. It's very, very strange. So money matters, but also it doesn't matter. But how important is money? I don't think money is the most important thing in the world at all. I think money is oxygen, though. I mean, it's at least as important as oxygen. So, you know, I know that's debatable to some people, but I would suggest it's about that important. I don't need a room this big full of money. Might make me feel a little more comfortable. I don't need a room this big full of oxygen. Not for the day. I mean, long term, if I was stuck in this room, I'd be glad it was a really big room, right? I mean, you need a certain amount. The reality is, and this is more for the people who are newer in this business, money doesn't buy happiness, except when it does. That first $50,000 a year of income, that is below the baseline. Like that is, you're still in sustenance, barely surviving mode. That second $50,000, you get to $100,000 a year. In Canada, I'm gonna say, certainly in a major urban center, $100,000 a year, okay, you're in the zone of comfort. Not super comfort, not luxury, but you're comfortable. Your Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you know, the shelter, food, clothing, the basics are taken care of. You're in a pretty good spot. And extra money actually does make you a little happier. And so at that third $50,000 tier, $150,000, at that point, you're definitely happier than the person at 100, who is way happier than the person at 50. Because at $150 a year, if the transmission falls out of your car the same time you drop your iPhone 12 in the toilet, although they're waterproof now, so let's say you back over it before the transmission blows up. So you've lost your iPhone, you've lost the transmission, and the hot water tank goes. So it's like a $5,000 day. You're ruined if you're making 50 grand a year. That's a month's income, basically. If you're making 100 grand a year, I mean, you'll survive that, but geez, like the rest of the year is gonna be a little on the tight side. At 150, you deal with it. You deal with it. And so as you approach $200,000, you're in this zone of comfort where you really are comfortable. But as you add additional money, you don't get any happier. Life doesn't really get any easier. You still have all the basics of life you have to get through. And I know that I'm potentially coming across as somebody who, well, yeah, man, whatever you say, give me 500 grand a year so I can see what it's like. I get that. And the good news is you're in a business where you can absolutely make $500,000 in the coming year if you so choose. It's there, it's doable, but it will not make you any happier. It really won't. And I haven't met a $100 million producer yet. You can do the math on where their income would be. We're gonna do some math on some of that actually coming up. I haven't met one yet who did that in pursuit of the money, in pursuit of the income, because they already knew by the time they hit that $150,000, $200,000 bracket, and cleaned up some past debts and maybe renoed the kitchen and maybe updated the car and a few other little things, that they didn't become a happier person for having that additional income. That's not what it's about. So this is not all about money. This topic is all about money, and money matters, but I'm trying to be clear to tease the two things apart. In life, it's not all about money. But in day-to-day brokering, your money matters because it's a difference of working extra years of your life or not. That's what we're going to talk about here. All right, so when I say money is, oxygen, it can be that important, and here's a helpful little airline travel experience for you, right? Put the oxygen mask on yourself first, right? That's what always matters. So like I say, a greater income doesn't always lead to a greater life. In fact, it almost never does. But you got to measure what matters, right? People measure the volume. They measure the volume of production that they do. They measure their weight. They measure calories. But do those things matter? Not really. And really, when you're measuring volume, you're measuring income anyway. It's just doing it in a more Canadian way. We're not talking about the actual income. We're not talking about how much money we make. But we are. I mean, it's code, right? You just drop a zero off, and what are we, drop 2 zeros off. What are we talking about? Move the decimal point. I told you I wasn't that great at algebra. So we measure volume, we measure weight, we measure calories, we measure all these things that I don't think matter that much. We do need to measure what matters, right? We need to measure our quality time, our health, our energy. Those are important things to measure, but social pressure triggers us to measure a lot of things that don't matter. The likes, social media in particular, right? Triggers us to measure so many things that do not matter. But we keep score in kind of interesting ways, often, with money. And here's a question for you. What's your relationship status with money? Right? For most people, it's complicated. It's complicated. Some of us feel like we need to live always in pursuit of money. Others of us feel like we don't deserve the money that is flowing our way. So we try and sidestep it and get rid of it. We give it away, or we invest it stupidly, knowing it's being invested stupidly. But there's all these different relationships that we have with money that it's actually worth investing some time and money on exploring with a therapist, potentially, depending on just where you're at exactly. We see how interesting people's relationships with debt can be, where they'll hold on to that $20,000 consumer debt for years. Oh, I have $80,000 in my RRSP. Yeah, but you have $20,000 that you're paying 20% on this MasterCard. Oh, I know, but I got a 5% return on my RRSP. 5% of 80, 20% of 20, like, what are you doing? Why do you have this money over here in your RSP and you're carrying this debt? This makes no sense. But like I say, people have complicated relationships with money, big time. And as I said, money matters at least as much as oxygen. You have to face that fact. And we measure so many different things, but for some reason, we don't measure the money the way we should. Here's an interesting pair of slides. I forgot to wear a heart rate monitor today. I made a note of it a little while ago. But this is a heart rate monitor that I'm wearing. And this is actually in a Bikram yoga class, which I think that was like, 100 years ago? I mean, does Bikram yoga even exist anymore? My gosh. Anyway, 75 minutes, 112 beats per minute. And you can see the stress measurer and the heart rate variability are measured as well. But the heart rate, the blue line, average about 112. Worked a little harder right at the end, really gave her, but consistently. Here's a heart rate chart, exact same app, used it a week later, delivering a 75-minute presentation. Average heart rate, 124 beats per minute. That's like a marathon heart rate pace. That's unbelievable to me. And I never would have believed it if I hadn't actually measured it. That's the point I'm trying to make here. I mean, I do find this kind of interesting. 112 in a 40 Celsius hot yoga room, 124 in a very cool space, like very cool, just chatting to a camera. I'm interested in where my heart rate is at right now because is it lower without a live audience of 600 people? what does it look like, right? There's 623 of you tuned in right now. If there was 623 live people here, would my heart rate be higher? Hopefully, I'll get an opportunity to do a little A/B testing on that. But we've got to measure things, right? There's a quick little comic for you, right? Your goals versus their goals, totally different.